13.
Look at us.
Right? Look at us, girl. I know we keep saying like we're gonna be better, but one of our goals for this year and for this podcast and for this, whether you listen on Spotify or YouTube or follow along on TikTok or Instagram, is we really want to be putting out more content so that you, our village, can absorb it and provide feedback, be a guest on our podcast, share your motherhood experience with us, or fatherhood for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
We don't discriminate against the men in our village. Anywho, we hope that you had a fantastic holiday season.
It's a new year. Happy New Year. For those that celebrate, Merry Christmas. Well, belated Merry Christmas. But all in all, happy holidays. The holidays this year were a little different than most years. Um, with the peak of RSV season, RSV hit our home. So we decided, why not, fresh in my memory. It's Zeke's year anniversary of being transported. Well, we'll get into all of that. So why not dive in and explain to y'all our experience with RSV? So Julie, go ahead. How was your experience? Like, it's something great, huh? Tell me
Yeah,
about your
what was
experience.
your experience? So, like Michelle said, and I've mentioned it on the stories here and there, and I think in previous podcasts, but we've never actually fully addressed the trauma that our little guy and that we went through. And that when I say we, I primarily mean me and Omar, but my entire family. Prior to Ezekiel being RSV positive in December of 2023, 22, we didn't really know anyone that had RSV. Like, we knew what the initials were, but we didn't know really what it was, or we didn't have that like relationship with someone that has had that hit their home. Um, RSV is an upper respiratory infection. Now, we are not doctors, we are not medical professionals, so let's put that out there. This is just our experience, what we found, symptoms that we have noticed as parents, treatments that we have used. But if, by all means, if you think your son or your daughter may have RSV or you're concerned, follow your gut. And if you think it's time to go to the hospital, don't hesitate. Don't sit here and listen to this hour-long podcast to decide if you're going to go or not. Get that baby to the ER. That's my little soapbox before we get into it. My next soapbox is, like Michelle said, we are in the peak of RSV flu season. There's a really ugly stomach flu going around. There's an ugly cold. Keep your little one safe, even if that means having uncomfortable decisions and conversations with family. If a baby did not come out of you, does not carry your DNA, if you are not listed on that baby's birth certificate as mom, dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, do not kiss that baby. Do not feed that baby from your fork. Do not share your drink with that baby. They are too little to be fighting our big germs. And I will say that over and over and over until the day I die. We need to protect our kids from viruses, especially right now. So let's go ahead and rewind back to December of 2022. Ezekiel was just shy of being 5 months old. Your girl was finally getting ready to go back to work. I'm going to go back to work. He's going to go to daycare. He'll be good, right? Like, what could go wrong sending my kid to daycare for the first time in December, peak RSV cold flu season? Nothing, right? Joke's on me. So I went back to work on December 1st, which was on a Thursday. And then I went Thursday, Friday, and then on Sunday morning, Ezekiel woke up with a fever. And I was like, fuck, dude, like, I just went back to work. In December, he was admitted to the hospital 2 times, and there was a total of 3 ER visits in December alone. And his swab at his second ER visit came back positive for RSV. Now, if you are my personal friend on Instagram, there is a little highlight bubble with a little like mask emoji. And there's like raw, real time videos and pictures of Ezekiel. They are really hard to even go back and look at, even now for me. It just brings it all back. So it started the RSV itself, like that. We're gonna focus on that first visit for the sake of this conversation. I had dropped off the baby at daycare at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and then had daycare had mentioned that he drank a lot of milk and that he was a very happy baby, and he has loved his breast milk. So the next day, I dropped off like an extra large, like those gallon Ziploc bags with a bunch of like pre-measured out frozen breast milk for him, and he had fresh breast milk that I had pumped that morning because I was like, he's getting a little sick, like let me give him fresh milk because they say like your body makes what your baby needs. So dropped him off, went to work, didn't think anything of it. And then at, I don't know, 4:45, I get a phone call from Omar in a panic saying, Ezekiel's not breathing right, meet me at the ER. That's it. And I was like, what? What do you mean he's not breathing right? So I pop up and I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to the ER. I gotta go. And they're like, all right, yeah, go. I got there before they did. The baby in the car, he was able to kind of park like in the drop off. I had to go find parking, um, which was fine. But when I got to him, the baby, he, the best way I can explain it is he sounded like a squeaky toy with the squeaker broken. So every breath was very, very shallow and noisy. And like you could see there was like pulling at his nose. Like it would like, I don't know how to explain it. Like it would get
Miss
big.
Blair.
Yeah, it would like his nostrils would flare out, and then in his throat you could see like when he would struggle to breathe, you could see the pulling here, and then because this was our second time there, we had kind of already knew the drill, so we had his pants off, socks off, because they do put blood oxygen monitor so they can check the level of his blood oxygen levels and like his heartbeat and breaths per minute and stuff. But then when I actually took up his shirt, his poor, like, his breathing was so bad that his skin would go into his ribs and you can see his ribs with every breath he would take. And, like, hearing it was horrible, but actually seeing him
Mm.
struggle to do something so basic as breathe, like, it broke me down to my core. But in that moment, I couldn't break for him. Um, so luckily a nurse was passing by and she heard him and she was like, have you been seen? And I'm like, no, they just have us back here because they were still doing his numbers and they didn't want him out like with the general people waiting in the waiting room. She's like, oh no, you're not waiting, like you and that baby are coming here now, like you guys are going to go into your own room. And like she wasn't even our nurse. I think she was not even an ER nurse. I think she was just like making rounds. But she ended up putting us in a room, and then she took it upon herself to like page the ER doctor, the pediatrician, the respiratory therapist, and like within I would say within 15 minutes of her running into her, he was put on room air, like oxygen from the wall. But within like an hour, we had all the doctors there. So she was just literally at my beck and call while we waited for the peds room. Um, so there was when I saw the pediatrician at our local hospital, she was like, there's a couple things that I hospitalized an RSV baby for, and the amount of the severe tugging, and the fact that his blood oxygen level was a 69. That's an immediate, no questions asked, you're being admitted. For reference, they don't want your blood oxygen to go below 90, so he went in at 69, which is very, very dangerous for for anyone, even more for a 5-month old. Um, he wasn't really wanting to eat. The bad daycare just complained to Omar that he didn't want to eat, that he cried all day, that she didn't know what was wrong with him. So then I got mad and I was like, so you let him suffer to do something so basic as breathe. You didn't bother calling me. You didn't bother calling 911. You have 40 years of daycare experience. How could you not notice that something was severely wrong with this child that I entrusted you to take care of? And it wasn't until like once we got settled and he was put on like a ventilator to help him breathe, like once the initial like, oh shit, let's get him stable, then the pediatrician and the ER nurse that we saw, and the ER doctor, they came into the room and they basically told me that if I did not file a complaint with the state licensing board for the daycare, that they were going to file one for negligence. So we did have to file a complaint with the licensing board. I mean, they got subpoenaed, we got subpoenaed, medical records got subpoenaed, statements, because the fact that his blood oxygen level was so low could have been dangerous. We could have been having a very different conversation had Omar not gotten there when he got there and taken him to the ER without hesitation. I don't like to think about that, especially because we've had so many other issues with respiratory issues that if I let myself spiral from that one incident, I don't think I would have made it through the last year. Um, Again, no one knew what RSV was in my family. I would show them, FaceTime them, and they would cry just seeing him struggle. It was heartbreaking. He had a big mask on. He, wasn't really eating. I, of course, wasn't sleeping. I think the longest I went was maybe 4 days with a total of like an hour of sleep, not eating, not leaving the room, because my anxiety was that if I left the room, even to go to the bathroom or to shower, that I was going to come back to a dead baby that wasn't breathing. I mean, it's horrible, but that's to the point that it was because of how severe the breathing was. We that time I think we were in the hospital for 4 days, maybe five. Uh, Round the clock breathing treatments, whether it was albuterol or budesonide or room air. They didn't let him come home until he was able to be on room air. One of the worst things too is when they would have to deep suction him because he was so congested and had so much buildup in his little lungs, that they would like wrap him up like a burrito and then place him upside, like with his head closer to the nurses. And it always took 3 nurses to deep suction him. Um, and they would stick like the nasal suctiony, but with an extra like little wire hose, and they would like shove it all the way into his nose to try to get as much of the mucus out because he's little. He doesn't know how to cough it up or sneeze it out or get it out on his own. So he needed some help. So that was just hard because he hated it. Shortly after that, we put him in a bubble. I didn't see my family for Ezekiel's first Christmas. They didn't see him for his first Christmas. I was very much like, we are not going anywhere and no one is coming. So then we kept him in a bubble, didn't go anywhere. I tried going back to work on January 3rd and he went to a new daycare at that point. It's the little school that he's at now. They're much more vigilant, much more aware. There are more adults there, so there the ratio is 4 kids per adult, and they can't fall out of that ratio, even if that means that the director has to be in the classroom or the assistant director. Like they ensure that they don't go over that, and that's a licensing requirement. I found that out after the fact. The bad daycare was a 14-1, which I think she was out of um, compliance, but that's a whole nother thing. So I get a call on the 3rd, my very first day back at work, trying to go back, and they're like, "Hey, his breathing's a little odd. Like, you can get him and take him just to get looked at." Back to the ER we went. He was able to come home that day. And then that Sunday, so January 8th, we were going about our business, making dinner, getting ready for bath, and Omar was like, he's breathing funny. But at that point, like, we were paranoid anytime he was breathing a little bit odd. Like, he gasped, he sneezed, like, is he breathing? Just given how quickly he would go into respiratory failure. So we take him to the ER maybe like 10:30, and by 6:30 the next morning, I have 2 of the pediatricians of that hospital coming in and saying, "We've done everything that we can here. You need to be transported to a children's hospital." And I'm like, wait, what? Like, what is that? Wait, what do you mean you've done everything you can and I have to go somewhere else now? And where are you sending me? And why? Why can't you fix him? Like, we're here. And I think that was the moment that I was like, fuck, this is serious. If I have 2 pediatricians coming in and talking to us about having to get us medically evacuated to a bigger children's hospital that's better equipped to deal with babies of his size and these big issues, like, this is real. It's not like, oh, se le va a pasar, ponle Vicks. Like, no. I remember I called Michelle, I called my mom, and I was like, you guys need to get on a plane because I can't hold it together. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, we are waiting for a helicopter to take us to a children's hospital, but we don't know where we're going. So I remember I talked to her and I'm like, I don't care if it's in Sacramento. I don't care if it's in the Bay Area. I don't care if you send me to LA. You get him a bed wherever you can find him a bed because the children's hospital that they're associated with had no beds because of how bad RSV was. And for those that don't know, you can Google it and get like the scientific name. But an RSV for a baby is it's very similar to a cold for an adult, but their bodies are not equipped to battle it and they don't know how. So it hits them like a million times worse. They don't know how to cough up that phlegm. They don't know how to regulate their breathing. They don't know how to breathe through their mouth or nose, or and when to breathe through what avenue. So it causes them to have respiratory issues, a really bad cough, in some cases a fever. Now, not to say that if they have that, it's automatically RSV or that they need to have all that to have RSV. Different babies show different symptoms. So you guys want symptoms. It's hard to say, well, this and this and this and this, especially because it's also cold and flu season. And then we have, coronavirus going around. So it's very hard to say, like, this is what it is, what will lead to an RSV case. One thing that I became very vocal about, given just the amount of times we've been to the hospitals, is anytime that he's showing any kind of cold symptoms, I want him swabbed for RSV. He fucking hates it. It's hard to watch. They pin him down. They stick the freaking swab in both, not like a COVID test, but it's not a test that's readily offered. And that's what I found out. You have to ask for it and you have to advocate for it. And this is the time when, especially in the medical profession, you need to advocate for your babies because they can't. We had been flown to Stanford. At that point, his test came back positive for another upper respiratory infection that they didn't test for here because they weren't equipped to test for it here. So until we got there, that they re-swabbed him and tested him. And we were at Stanford Children's for a little bit shy of 10 days. We were in the pediatric ICU for 4 days, I think, 4 or 5. And then they finally were able to get him down to a level where he could go to the bronchial floor. So he went to the bronchial floor for a while. And then they were just like trying to wean him off of oxygen support, but they would like pull him down a little bit and then he would struggle. So they put him back up. And then they'd like try to pull him down a little bit more and then back up. So it was a constant like dance. It's something that I don't wish any parent.
I
Um,
think the worst part of it, it's not like, with, for example, a stomach bug, right? Where you have symptoms, you let everything out, you're kind of like weak and dehydrated, and it's passed in like a couple days, right? There's steps to kind of like the timeline of it. And with RSV, it's very much like you'll have a great morning and then a bad night, or a
yeah,
great, a bad afternoon and it's a smooth night. It's
yeah.
very roller coaster
Very
until it's
roller
like,
coaster. It's very, and then in Ezekiel's situation, so that was in January, and then we put him back in a bubble and we went home, and then we got the okay to go see my grandparents. So we went to LA, and I was gonna baptize Diego at that trip, and I woke up at 11:30 and decided it was time to take him to the hospital down there. So we got admitted to Kaiser in Southern California. We were there for 5 days. Also
Mhm.
prenatal ICU, also for breathing issues. And then we finally came home. I tried to go back to work. He ended up back in the emergency room being admitted again for a couple days. I think that time was 3 days. Got out, tried to go back to work again. He was back in the ER. And it wasn't necessarily RSV all those times. And what the science doesn't necessarily, what they can't link for sure is, did he get all these other issues because of the RSV attacking his lungs, or is it just luck of the draw? Right. So they have since he's gone into the OR. They've triple scoped him. They put cameras in his nose, in his throat, in his ears to make sure that the anatomy was all correct. That's all been cleared and everything is where it's supposed to be. There's nothing concerning as far as the anatomy goes. We're doing allergy tests. We're doing elimination diets. We're trying to figure out, because what's in Ezekiel's case particularly, the concerning part and what's confusing and frustrating to a lot of the doctors that we see, because we have a ton of different doctors. Like I go down to Stanford, he has doctors here. They send his tests and imaging to a different part of Stanford because everyone wants to figure out the main concern is that he can go into sudden onset acute respiratory failure at any moment. And that's kind of like Michelle was saying. 1 minute you're fine, 1 minute you need to be put on oxygen. And the way that it works, at least it was explained to us, it's, you're fine, room air, which is what we're breathing now. The like first stage of assistance is oxygen air. So that's like out of the wall, like, the wall has like
The mask, the
mask or the little candle. I think that's called. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. After that, it goes to uh, BPAP, I think, BiPAP, and that's a machine that helps breathe for you. Then after that, I believe it's CPAP, but those may be backwards, and that's just like another level of support. And then after that comes intubation. So Ezekiel has been at the level right before intubation 3 times. So 3 different times I've had to sign and consent to having my less than 1 year old intubated. Um, and that's hard because of his age, it wouldn't just be an intubation. They would actually have to put him into a medically induced coma so they can intubate him correctly and so that he doesn't fight them. So being told like sign this paper so that we can put your kid in a coma so that we can make sure he's breathing, but my kid can't even talk. He's not even eating, and you want to shout like it's very hard to wrap your head around it. But when the doctor tells you like if this doesn't work, intubation is the next level. Like you sign the fucking papers.
and I think it's hard because in that moment, like Julie said, it's a lot. They're throwing medical terms at you. You're kind of like, I really like, you're trying to focus, but then you hear and you're trying to comfort your baby. Hold on, puppy. And many of times you're kind of like looking, right? You're looking. Okay, you're looking around looking for that adult. I always would look around and look for my mom, right? Like, what do I do? And then every time being slapped in the face with like, no, you are that mom.
Yeah,
You have
like
to make
you
that
need to make
decision.
that decision for your child, and Omar was there the entire like step of the way with me. I don't want to say he wasn't, he was there. But this was new to both of us to the point where the nurses on the child on the pediatric floor, they knew my son by his first name. Like they were on a first name basis with us. Um, the moment that they would see the transfer request, they all knew who he was and they were all waiting for him to come upstairs. And like I said, he was admitted 7 times between December of 22 through September of 23, with 15 ER visits. That's a lot. That is a lot for anyone, much less for a baby, to do
Yeah.
something so basic as breathe. And I have asthma and I've had very severe asthma attacks. So the fact that I know a portion of what he's going through to struggle to breathe, like that was even more like there's literally nothing I could do to make it go away. So I remember like the time that we got to Stanford, when we went to Stanford, the medevac team came in. They were getting him loaded up into the gurney because we did have to fly. But then it became a question of, well, what parent is going? Ezekiel was breastfed at the time, so it was a no-brainer. Almost like, no, even if he wasn't, like you'd be the one to go. But then it became a question of, well, we have to account for all the weight on the helicopter to see if you can even go with him. So then that was like a whole other layer of what the fuck do you mean? Like here we have to downgrade his level of oxygen support. right? That he needs to be in the gurney by himself, strapped up, and then um they have to put like a special blanket on him because we're going up in the air. I had to like get weighed. I think I had to take my sweater off. And there was like no space. So then the 45 minutes there, I didn't have eyes on my son because of how the helicopter was structured. So I was basically riding shotgun in the helicopter. Like the control panels were all like literally right there. But I was also able to hear the in-flight nurse and the paramedic, and they were the ones giving me updates. Like, and I could hear him crying and struggling a little bit, but they were the ones providing me updates. So that like made it a little bit easier, but it was still very hard to not see him for 45 minutes. And then when we got to Stanford, I was telling Michelle, like, it literally was like an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Like, a team met us on the helicopter pad. I don't know. I didn't even know where Stanford Children's Hospital was. I didn't know what it looked like until we left and got discharged. I didn't know what the outside looked like. I didn't know what was around us because we just flew in from the helicopter pad, and then they like were taking us through all these back doors and just spitting out his vital information statistics. And then we got into the PICU that we were going to be at, and it was like literally an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Glass doors, a one patient per room. Every nurse only had two patients, so they were at our beck and call, which was fantastic. All the staff there was great. He did fly with a IV in his scalp because they couldn't IV him. They tried like for 4 hours to IV him, till finally I was like, just give him a break. Like, I understand he needs the fluids because he wasn't eating, but his body and he is physically done. He wants nothing to do with any of you. So give me my son. Let me feed him because he's a little bit hungry and he wants to sleep, because at that point, by the time that he actually fell asleep on the day that we got sent to Stanford, we had not slept in 18 hours. Like, he took his nap, he woke up, and then he was up, and that whole night at the local hospital, he didn't sleep. And if he didn't sleep, we didn't sleep. He was just like quejándose, trying to breathe all night. We do what you're not supposed to do. We go to Google and they're like, oh, some kids die of RSV. And I'm like, fuck. Like, I've struggled so hard and I've been through so much shit, and I finally have everything that I want in this little person. And the possibility of him dying is very real, and it's at my front door. Um, so when they like put him in the gurney and I no longer physically had to hold him, I looked at Omar and I started to cry. And I was like, what is my life right now? Like, how is this happening to us? We have done everything, quote unquote, the right way, right? We limit exposures out. I didn't go to work for a longer time than I anticipated for other reasons. We didn't do Christmas. We didn't do New Year's. We don't take him anywhere. So, how is it that we are right back here with sudden onset respiratory failure? And to see that on like his medical chart, it's still like heartbreaking to know that my son had unexplained, really, like, here's the thing. The reason it's unexplained is because it was so severe and so sudden, like that. At 10:30 p.m., he was fine, like a little bit, noisy with the breathing. And by 2 a.m., he had to be put on oxygen support with no indication of how quickly he would turn. And that still rings true to this day. He could be totally fine for hours, for days, and then one little thing will cause him to go into needing oxygen support. So we've done a lot of appointments, a lot of conversations, a lot of research. And for us, what has worked, and I can only speak for what has worked for us. We do a couple of different rounds of inhalers daily. And then I also have different types of nebulizers. We have a total of 3 nebulizing machines in our house at all times, and one is always in the vehicle with us on top of the inhalers with the chamber because he's too little. So we use Flovent, which fucking sucks because some pharmaceutical people are more concerned with their pockets and they're stopping making it because I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me, but the doctor told me that it's something about if they continued to make Flovent, which a lot of kids rely on, especially kids that are asthmatic or have respiratory issues, they had to like pay more or do something, and they didn't want to. So instead of paying a little bit more to provide this life-saving medication to children, they are not making it. And now we're going to have the issue where the generic version I hear isn't easily covered by insurance. So there's that. Um, we also have an albuterol inhaler. We have a albuterol for the nebulizer. We have budesonide, which is very similar to Flovent. It's just a slightly different composition, and that goes to a nebulizer. We also do as needed. I always fuck it up. Progesterone. It's an oral steroid, but I don't want to give him steroid for the rest of his life. We are also very mindful of he does like a lot of immunity support. People call it like my hippie trippy shit, but you know what? Is it the placebo or does it work? I don't know, but I'm gonna keep doing it because he hasn't gotten as severely sick to be needing to go to the hospital. His baseline though, and this is what sucks, and Michelle can attest to this, his baseline, like normal, is always a little bit of a cold, a little bit of boogers, and some sneezing. That is his baseline. So whenever I go to the doctor, oh, when did this sickness start? Fuck, I don't know. December of 22. I don't have a date because he has never been quote unquote symptom free since he had RSV in December of 2022. So for a year and a month, right? Yeah, a year and a month, my poor pops has always constantly had cough, sneezing, and like watery eyes or any combination of those things. But like I said, we are very in on immunity support. So he has immunity support from a few different brands that we use. We also do like the propolis beekeepers spray. We do baths. He goes to bed every night with Vicks on his feet, you know, because we're still Mexican. So Vicks on the feet, on the chest, on the back. Um, we do agua de canela, like an anti-inflammatory to help with the inflammation of his lungs. Um, and we're always on alert, right? So if someone is sick, I'm like, we're not going there. We're not doing that. Please don't come if you're sick. I don't want them near my son. Take it personal or not, but this last year, if anything, has solidified the fact that for our kids, we need to go to war and burn bridges. And I'm fucking marching with the fucking matches we write at dawn. um, but I will say, given my experience with it, I have had meet people reach out, and not to say don't reach out to me. I'm going to tell you the same exact thing. In our experience, this is what happened, and it can be very different for you all. But if either parent or responsible relative has an inclination that you need to go to the ER, then take that baby to the ER. Because I had that experience, though, Michelle was able to draw from that just last month.
Knowing obviously in being in the medical field, I always knew what it was. I never directly worked with any kind of pediatric office or department. So, it was always something in the back of my head. Then, they started with the boogers and the fevers, and it was fine, like stable. Um, if you are from a Mexican family, they're very much like, oh, he has fever. You need to take him to the doctor. You need to put Vicks and do this and do that and do that. And it's like, first of all,
Córtale una cebolla y pícale una
ponle pan.
papa.
Yes, like ponle pan and do this and do that. And like Julie said, when it comes to my kids, I don't mind putting boundaries. Like me and my husband, we believe in science. We believe that the doctors, for the most part, are always going to tell you how it is, right? They say, once again, my pediatrician tells me you treat the baby, not the fever. Your baby can have a high fever. If they're eating, if they're acting like they normally would, just keep an eye out, right? You're going to treat the pain, make the baby feel comfortable. You're not going to give them Tylenol just to give the Tylenol. It's because they're hurting, whatever, right? So it's right around the time of my mom's birthday. We're getting ready to go hang out with her. He's had a fever for a couple days, but he had been fine. So we said, okay, let's go. He's better now. And once we get to my mom's, and he's like hitting a fever of like 103.7, I think is what I saw. And again, he was kind of like moving around. He would kind of eat a little. He wasn't really eating, but he was drinking the like suero and liquids we were giving him. So again, me and Michael on the same page. We're like, we're treating the kid, not the fever. We have my mom and my grandma, bless their souls. They're like, no, you need to do this, you need to do that. And we're like, it's fine, he's fine. Like, we're good. So that was Thursday. Friday, again, he kind of kept on with the fevers. Come Friday morning, it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and he peed for the last time in a couple days. But I changed his diaper. We went about our morning once he got up, and he wasn't eating. He wasn't drinking anything. I changed out, from water to juice to Suero. I tried offering different things to him, and he wouldn't sip not even one thing. He was just kind of carrying his bottle around, more for comfort. So all day I just kind of had an eye on him, again, treating the baby, not the fever. He was sneezing, he was coughing, but nothing out of the ordinary, right? Nothing that told me, like, you need to go now. So it just so happened that that Saturday we were going to just have a small little intimate thing here at the house for my oldest, Lionel's birthday. So I was getting ready to do like cake pops. I was making the cake pops with my mom, and he starts coughing this just like horsey, like, if you know what a croup cough is, that's what Diego sounded like. And he's had croup before. So I was like, you know what? Let me just keep an eye. And again, I kind of Michael was like, I think he's okay. Let's give him medicine again. And I'm like, no. Like, and again, I can see him breathing, and his breathing, once again, I don't know if it's because I had Zeke as a example. My brain was waiting and comparing what I saw to, like, okay, but it's not that bad. So I think we're fine. And again, I'm sitting here going about my day, but in my head, I'm just like, am I making a mistake? Am I listen to my gut? My gut tells me get in the car and take him. Am I overreacting? Have I just been with him all day that this is just a little bit faster pace, but it's not to Zeke's level. So he's fine. He's fine. So again, I'm kind of just like walking around thinking about prepping for the party, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, no. So my mom sits down and she's like, let's eat. And I said, I'm going to eat fast because I'm taking him to the ER. And Michael's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I know something is wrong. And again, I'd rather risk taking him and have him get whatever, a cold or something, and it be nothing, than for it to get to the point that I have to call 911 or run over there, right? And my thing was, I'd rather it be now that it's mild than wait for it to be that bad and then get to the ER and be told you still have to wait whatever amount of time. So we packed up the baby, we took him to the hospital. And when I tell you there was a line out of the door to check in, that thing, it was popping in the ER on a Friday night, okay?
Everyone was there.
Everybody was there. We're scanning the room, trying to figure out, like, where do we check in? Like, what is happening? I just see a bunch of babies like encuerados, just in diapers, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, okay, my baby's fever is not that bad. That by the time we checked in, the receptionist guy was like, hold on, goes over. If your baby has had a fever, before you check in, take off all their clothes. I don't want to see babies with their clothes if they have fevers. We turn around, and when I tell you how many parents are taking off clothes on babies, I'm like, oh my God. Like, again, to hear it is one thing. If I put the statistics on the screen and you see, wow, it hits this many babies a year, seeing it firsthand in real time, it just hits a lot different. So we get there, and I, tell him the symptoms, tell him how many days it's been going on, telling him his breathing has been a little funny. He looks at me dead in the eye and says, he's not crying, right? No, he looks fine. I can't hear him wheezing.
Struggling.
Tears are coming out of his eyes, so he's not dehydrated. I think he's fine, but yes, you can sit down and we'll get him checked out. And I said, well, I'm not going anywhere whether you think something or not. So we sit down, and, they're calling people. They call me in to take his vitals. They weigh him. They measure his oxygen. His oxygen was great. He had no fever, of course. always happens, right? Your kid is always like burning, all these symptoms, and then you take them to the doctor and they're like having the time of their life, like nothing ever happened to them. So we get there and Diego is he's cold, he's annoyed, it's loud, it's bright, it's almost midnight. He just wants to go to sleep and people are just poking around, moving his arms, moving his feet. Like he's just annoyed, you know? So finally we see the doctor and the doctor's like, okay, well, he has no fever. I can't really hear him wheezing. He does sound congested, but, he's crying and there's tears coming out of him. So I know he's not dehydrated. So I think you should just go home again, cuddles, give him some time, make sure he's drinking. And I said, I don't think you understand what I said when I mean he hasn't had a sip of anything in almost 24 hours. Like in 2 hours, we have had hit the 24-hour mark where not a drop of water has entered his body. Therefore, nothing has come out. He has not produced a dirty diaper in almost 24 hours. You mean to tell me that's normal? Because I know it's not. Right. And like Julie mentioned, everybody's kind of steps of RSV, their symptoms look so different. Every baby is so different. And he kept trying to tell me, like, I think he's good. And I'm like, no, he's not, And I don't know if, I mean, maybe it was that I was kind of being pushy. I was raising my voice, but I don't care. I know that at the end of the day, I sat there and saw so many other people get crazy. And not to say that, like, I've been on the other side. I've been on the side where it's like, your hands are tied, but at this point I knew, like, I would rather you tell me again, let's run everything and everything be negative, then I can go home with a peace of mind knowing I tried, I listened, and it's nothing. So he's like, again, trying to sway me out of it. Like, if we do everything, we got to poke him, we got to draw blood. And I said, I'd rather you draw blood. He has to get blood drawn next month anyway. So let's do it.
Yeah.
And oh, I got to swab him. That's going to hurt. He'll forget about it tomorrow. Like,
You forget about it in 5 minutes. Like,
like, let's do it all. Like you said, we
and
either
part
do.
of it is our the medical staff is just also so like slammed, inundated.
Yes.
So they may be very dismissive. And that's what Michelle's saying. And that's why we always say, like, you need to advocate, advocate, advocate. And don't be afraid to be that Karen in the hospital for your kid, because your kid may
Yeah.
need Karen to come out.
Yeah, and exactly. So once he said, okay, let's just do everything, chest x-ray, blood work, we'll swab him and we'll do it all. They swabbed him, they drew his blood. And of course, like, aside from the initial nurses that helped like put the IV and get everything going, like, she was a little bit snappy with him. Like, dude, give the kid a break. He's barely a year and some months.
Yeah,
Like,
he's not even two.
she would be like, well, don't do that, we need to put the IV. And it's like, okay, bitch, I don't even let like people putting an IV in me. What makes you think this 2-year old, like, he
Who's not
doesn't know
feeling
you,
well, doesn't know
you
who
know?
you are.
So everyone besides her was a little like, but luckily it was like she did help and then she left. But right away the another nurse came, and I kid you not, as soon as they swabbed him, she walks out. Another nurse comes and they're, repeating vitals. They're asking me all this, how long has it been? Blah blah. You repeat yourself so much in the hospital. She looks at him and she's like, page them. He's pulling. Again, I already knew what pulling meant because of Zeke and their experience, and my heart sank, and I'm like, fuck, it's gonna be positive. Um, and whew, I thought we were ready.
I thought so too. But you just saying pulling, I was like, it brings it all back. It brings it all back to the you feel so useless.
Ooh, and
So
again,
for
like
those
Julie
that
mentioned,
don't know, when a nurse or a doctor says, "Oh, they're pulling," that's the visual that their insides are really struggling to breathe.
and luckily, like I said, it was a packed ER, but within a minute or two, like, they both came in, which I think she was training the guy. But she's like, okay, just to clarify, like, not a sip. And I'm like, again, not a sip of water, not a drop of pee. Like, he's had the same diaper. since this morning. And she's like, okay, so she starts ordering like all these things, you know. And again, I'm like trying to see what the next step is. And then she's like, okay, mom, we're admitting you. And again, I know she had mentioned like, I know, I'm sorry, mom, like I know so many people have asked like all these questions, the same questions over and over, right? The nurse, the doctor, the other nurse, the admitting nurse, like the pediatric nurse. She's like, but you have to know that like everyone's numbers are also different. So only one parent gets to stay with the baby. So I text Michael and I'm like, hey, they're admitting us, but only one parent can be here until we get moved to a room. If you want to go home, just go home. And he's like, okay, well, you know, again, as a mom of multiple, I think it just hits a little bit different because my child is in the hospital. They just told me he has RSV. I physically see the pooling. Everyone's kind of throwing everything at me. I'm meeting all these new doctors and respiratory doctors and therapists, and you know, everyone's coming up to you. And then I'm also like, oh my God, Leo's at home. Like I know mom has him. I know he's asleep, but like, is he okay? Does he know I'm not there? And so that was always in the back of my head, but he was
Then it
fine. So
also became a concern of, well, does Leo have RSV?
yeah, that was the first question they asked. Like, is he the first one sick? And are there any other kids at the house? And I'm like, well, he is the first one to show symptoms like of this. And I do have a 3-year-old at home. And they were like, does he have symptoms? And then so they started asking about Leo. And I'm like, no, everything is fine. So again, the night was kind of like a rough one. He, you know, in the hospital, they're coming in and out, checking him, they're admitting us. So it's like new nurses, like I think again being in the medical side, like I think Omar was the one who told me like, didn't it piss you off when you saw them do like X, Y, and Z? And I think for me, it's like it doesn't piss me off because like I know that's their job, right? I would rather it hurt me to see them put the IV than for them not to, and then me be like, well, why the fuck did she not put the IV when the
Right.
doctor ordered? You know, like I guess on their end it's like a miss. You're gonna hate them either way, you
Yeah.
know. It was like, you know, on the clock therapy. And again, my experience learning how Julie's experience was like I was always waiting for it to get to Zeke's level. And I know that I shouldn't have, right? That's probably very like trauma of me, like it wasn't my experience, but I was just waiting for it to get that bad. For us it was always very stable to the point where like I think we only had to put oxygen on him like one time while
And
we
it
were
was
there.
room, it was the oxygen from the wall.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like that bad. And even then it was like I was able to hold the mask to him. I didn't have to like have it strapped on him. But again, you know, we spent the night. The next morning the pediatric team came in and they were like, you know, there's so many babies here. You can't leave the room. I can't have you walking around like, you know, you're stuck in here, but whatever we can do to help you get comfortable, like please let us know. Um so, you know, it was like 2 in the morning, and me and Michael were like, well, we have to cancel the party. The party is a kid's party. All of my nieces, my nephews, my goddaughters are coming. Like, there's no way I'm risking, like, no, you know? So it's like 6 in the morning, and we're texting everybody, like, hey, we're in the hospital. Like, party's off. I'm so sorry, but like, my kid is in the hospital, you know? So thank God for my mom because she was here to help prep for the party and she ended up being like the superhero of it all. But thankfully, because she was here, like Michael was able to go to the hospital with us on Saturday. So he spent a good chunk of time with us. But you guys know Diego, he is a mama's boy. So even in the hospital, he didn't want anybody but me. Like I couldn't stand up to stretch my legs because he'd freak out that I was gonna leave him. So like Julie mentioned, going to the bathroom was a struggle because like you know what they tell you, if you have to go to the bathroom you have to lock them up into this bed, and it literally looks like a cage. I kid you not. Like
So
it's
it's
for
like
their safety.
it's an old school crib. So the mattress itself is about chest level. I'm short, so the mattress
Hmm.
itself is about a little bit in between your waist and my boobs, right?
Yeah,
And then the sides of the crib all go up another, fuck, I don't know, three
it's
feet.
tall.
And
Like,
so when it's all, and then the top, it's ventilated, or like there's another layer on top so that they don't climb out. So it literally does look like an animal cage.
I think for me, it was like he didn't know where he was. All these machines are beeping. He's connected to all these things.
And now you're
So
leaving him. How dare
yeah, so
you?
I'm right there. So I would be like in the bathroom, like, aquí estoy, Diego, no te dejé. Mommy's right here. But I digress. Saturday, like 6 p.m. comes around. We're eating dinner because, my mom, or they had stopped and sent food. And my mom texts us, hey guys, Leo has 107, no, 102.3. Okay, 102 point whatever fever. What do I do? One, I thank my mom for obviously like checking, and two, like checking what we wanted to do, because easily she could have done whatever she thought was right, but obviously we've set that boundary where she knows, like, let me check. And at that moment, I kid you not, I wanted to faint. I felt like, oh my God, if my baby is sick there, how can I clone myself? How am I going to stay here with one? And how do I make my way there? And me and Michael just looked at each other and we both were like, fuck. We just broke down and we're like, how do we do this, And so he was like, what works for us is that he's a mama's boy, Diego's a mama's boy, like, you know,
Leo was a daddy's
Leo
boy.
is a daddy's boy. Diego is a mama's boy. The best course of action is for me to go. And that way we both have a kid and we're both updating each other. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, like as much as it breaks my heart, there's no way I'm leaving Diego here. And there's no way that you're going to let my mom stay with Leo so you can come. So we kind of were in that pickle, as a mom of multiples, you're leaving one behind but staying with one, and you're like, how do I replicate myself to be in every which way? Um and so yeah, having to, like, again, on the clock, people coming in and like checking his vitals and treatments and doctors, and luckily we stayed there maybe 4 or 5 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days, 5 days. um and again, it was like literally we got out like Monday, Tuesday, and then that weekend was Christmas. So they kept telling us, like, we apologize, mom, but we just want to make sure that he's good so that you don't have to come back in a couple of hours. And I was like, I will stay here through New Year's as long as my baby is okay. I don't care about the holidays. I don't care about anybody. Like, I do not care. I'd rather you tell me he's good to go than for you to tell me I don't recommend him leaving. There's no way I'm taking him unless you tell me to. Um, so the weekend was pretty easy because again, my mom was here, so it was easy for me to be able to like get food. I think it's a little bit different obviously for my grandparents, as much as I wish that they really thought about themselves first, because they're older. RSV can hit elder people as well,
You
but
know,
for my mom,
my grandpa has cancer and he's going through cancer treatment. My grandma has really bad asthma and her lungs are jacked. So they aren't
so
necessarily the healthiest grandparents to be around respiratory infections.
exactly. But, obviously hearing them, or when they heard the news, they're like, we're going regardless. So it's like, a gamble. But I think the hardest part for us was like really, really setting that boundary for my in laws. Not because we don't love them. I love it and appreciate that right away. They were like, we're on our way. And I was like, absolutely not. First of all, I don't need for you to get sick. But more importantly, you have my nephew, who is also just a year old, at home. So the last thing I need is for you to come visit us and, with the kindness of your heart to like bring us whatever, but for that to be in your system and then you go and take that to my nephew. Not only that, but his mom is pregnant also. So it was like we did not want to see my in-laws step a foot not in our house, not at that hospital. Like, just text us the updates, call me, FaceTime me, but please do not come. And it was hard to tell them that. And I'm sure for them it was like, you don't want us to help you. But I think the safety of my nephew and, my sister in law was above it all. And if I hurt people's feelings, like, I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
So I quickly
Yeah.
looked on the CDC guide website, and I don't know when this was last updated, but and I'm reading verbatim. RSV can be dangerous for infants and young children. Each year in the United States, an estimated 58,000 to 80,000 children younger than 5 years are hospitalized due to RSV infection. So that's not how many people get it. That's just how many little ones have to be admitted for RSV.
Right. And
So
like
it's
we
massive.
mentioned, these are numbers of hospitalizations. That is not going towards the ones who get swabbed at the pediatrician's office and are stable enough to go home. Not counting the kids who don't get swabbed and have the symptoms and don't have to go to the hospital. So that number can be a lot more. It is very serious. Luckily for us, like Julie had mentioned a lot after Zeke got his RSV, like back to back sicknesses and hospitalizations. With us, he's been pretty healthy since then. He still has the lingering cough and lingering congestion, but it's been pretty smooth. We just had an appointment, and obviously, like all the upcoming appointments and follow ups for him, but it's going pretty smooth. When I was in the hospital, Julie and Omar offered to like send coffee money to people, and she had told me like, "What do I send you?" And I'm like, "No, don't send me anything because I have my mom, I have my grandparents, I have Michael who are able to, right? I cannot fathom the idea of like a single mom at the ER by herself."
Especially
And
single
even
moms
then,
to multiples. Like, so during that
yeah.
time, and something that not to pull away from that, but just maybe deviate just slightly. Um, After everything that we went through, and once Ezekiel was cleared healthy, something that Omar and I really wanted to do because we felt it was necessary, we were pulled to do this, is we are beginning the Ezekiel Robert Foundation. Um, we are we're still going through the state and IRS to get our 503c certification for nonprofit, to be able to deliver not just gift cards and DoorDash and coffee to parents when your child is suddenly admitted to a hospital, but even basic things. Our very first time that we were admitted, I was in work clothes, slacks and a coat and um flats, and Omar was in his work clothes, and he's in construction, so work boots and jeans and his t-shirt. And then we were admitted. We didn't have pajamas, a toothbrush, a pillow. We had nothing. I mean, we didn't think this would happen to us, right? So one thing that we have done since is we have our emergency, like our go bag for the hospital, and anytime that we go to the ER, it goes in it's a luggage bag that goes in the car on the off chance that we have to be admitted. And it doesn't have like all these luxurious things. It has literally a hairbrush, a toothbrush, a full size toothpaste, mouthwash, wipes, a pair of pajamas, a pair of slippers. It's the most basic necessities that you find yourself needing when you're thrown into your child is staying at a hospital. I'm not going to leave my 6 month old to go to Target and get these things, right? There's people though that don't have that. Like I had thrown it up on our page, like, hey, if cooties are going around, if your baby is sick with RSV or any kind of sick and you need a coffee or dinner, I can send you a DoorDash gift card, help. And the amount of people that were like, dude, my kid is sick. I don't need anything, but my kid is sick. And it wasn't just in DMs, it was in text messages like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is fantastic. I want to help. There is going to be more to come on the official like release of the Ezekiel Robert Foundation, but that's what it's going to be for. It's going to be for parents that are suddenly, you're finding yourself thrown into your child is being admitted and you can't leave, or you don't have it in you to leave the hospital to go to Target because your baby is 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, or you are having to now take a day off of work and it's not paid. That's what the
Mhm.
hope for the Ezekiel Robert Foundation is, to provide these very basic things that you shouldn't worry when your child is in the hospital, right? You shouldn't worry about, fuck, I don't have, and you may not worry like, shit, I don't have slippers or pajamas, but any little thing that can make you a little bit more comfortable in this chaotic thing, like a pair of sweats and
Oh,
slippers, like That is the goal for the Ezekiel Robert Foundation. The goal is for us to, your village is showing up for you 1,000%, always, even though we may be miles apart, sometimes states apart. If you find yourself in this similar situation where your child is sick, you're in the hospital, you're in the ER for hours without end, you are admitted, and you need a cup of coffee, even now, even though the post is gone, reach out to us. I will gladly send you money for a coffee. I will DoorDash you. I will give you a gift card to DoorDash. We will do whatever we can to get you a little sense of normal. If that is a fucking $8 latte, so be it. Here's the fucking $20. Go buy yourself two $8 lattes. I don't, whatever it is that you need in that moment. Please, please, please reach out to us. There's going to be more to come with the Ezekiel Robert Foundation, how you all can donate to it and register for it. The goal right now is that we want to start it, launch it, have some pre-made bags for local hospitalizations where we're at in Sonoma County, and then it'll eventually grow to the state, hopefully, if I can get a hold of the right people in the right metropolitan areas to kind of have these bags on stack so we can start delivering to different hospitals. That is my vision for the Ezekiel Robert Foundation. But for now, what we can offer you is a cup of coffee, or dinner on via DoorDash gift card. You would choose what's delivering to your hospital.
Every baby is different, and we can sit here and tell you like it's mild cold-like symptoms, but like we've mentioned, what seems like baseline for Zeke is not baseline. If my kid has moquitos and a cough, like something is going on with them because that's not their baseline.
So,
So
like, you as their parent know what their baseline is. Either if you are in a relationship or there's multiple primary caregivers of this child, if one thinks it's time to go, just go, right? But that is our RSV experience. We're hoping it's not scaring anyone. That's not our intent. Our intent is just to and again, we're not medical professionals. This is just our personal experience with RSV and respiratory infections in our little ones. If you're in the thick of it, mama, with cooties and RSV, we feel for you.
As a parent, I know it's hard, right? It's hard. Families, can get a little booty tickled, but your kids come first, and don't be afraid to set those boundaries, because if it's them or your baby, I'm gonna choose my baby time and time again, and I don't care if you get butthurt, then you don't care about my child that much.
Yeah, if you're that selfish, then you don't need to be around my kid.
Do your research. You do with your kid what you think is best, and this is our story. We're not telling you if your kid has this, they have RSV. We're not telling you, if they have a cold, use everything we use. Because our kids are our kids, and what Julie uses, I don't use. What I use, she doesn't use. And we're sisters,
If you are unsure of how to go to battle, all you gotta do is show up. That's all you gotta do.
Yes.
Show up for your kids.
Yes.
If the doctor is saying no, I don't want to order this test, and they're adamant that the answer is going to be no, be like, okay, can I please get a letter signed by you? Another doctor, or can I get a letter signed by you on hospital letterhead that you're denying me this request? And their answer will quickly change.
Yep.
But advocate. So, as always, you are beautiful. You are enough. We love you. You are worthy. You are capable. And you have these kids because they are meant for you. No one is going to fight for these kids the way you will fight for your kids. So, we love you. Hope that this year brings you nothing but happiness, and whatever definition that is to you, and that you see us more often now, and that you share our pages with a friend, a mama friend, a dad friend. Let's help our virtual village grow. We're here for you 1,000%. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.